Good morning!
Tim, listen, you messed up. I'm switching to Android. I have here one of the best machines for software developers and students that I've ever come across when it comes to getting the most bang for your buck. That's an American phrase meaning the most value for your money, okay? Get your head out of the gutter. And after using this machine for 1.5 years, it's become clear to me that I just want to keep her for a long time to come. Hey, I'm Alex, and if you're new here to the channel, then welcome. But if you've been around for a while, it might not be a surprise to you that the machine I'm talking about is the MacBook Air M1. This skinny little guy right here. Or lady. I don't know. It changes. Could be either one, right? In my videos, I've been running tests of different software frameworks and languages on the channel for a while, comparing MacBook Air M1 to other machines like the MacBook Pro, like the Intel machine. This is not the Intel machine. This is the MacBook Pro. I've been comparing it to that one. Intel machine is back there. I've been comparing it to the Asus gaming machine, Dell XPS, Lenovo. Check out the videos in the library if you want to see all that. Of course, more testing is on the way, so make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to catch those. So if you don't want to watch this whole video and you just want a quick answer, you already got it. It's the MacBook Air M1. And if you're even considering that machine, it's in your range of possibilities and you're trying to shop for a new machine, you won't go wrong by buying it. Right now, I'll go into why. When Apple released their M1 chip back in late 2020, they really wanted to impress upon the world that this is the way. Disney, don't sue me. This is the new way that personal computers can go now. They can be ARM even, which is something that wasn't in the consumer market in the past. Well, there have been some machines that were ARM based, but they weren't really successful. Not like Apple shown with the M1s. And it seems to me they were in such a hurry that they really overshot the mark with one particular machine, the Air. And they did this by putting such a powerhouse chip, well, in not such a powerhouse body. But it worked out. Apple did prove that this new tech is incredible, and it captured a lot of attention because of the value that it provided, especially in the small body. However, they effectively killed their 13-inch MacBook Pro line when they released it at the same time and with pretty much the same capabilities as the Air. In fact, the MacBook Pro M1 ended up being one of the most popular refurbished machines that Apple sells in their certified refurbished store. Why? Well, since people were able to get pretty much the same power in a cheaper machine with no fans, why would anybody buy the MacBook Pro instead of the MacBook Air? It's not because the Pro had more power in it. It's because they wanted to have the Pro in the name. People that are used to buying the MacBook Pros would look at the MacBook Pro and they wouldn't consider the MacBook Air, but that might have been a mistake for those folks. And that's why I'm glad that I made the videos that I made showing the power of the MacBook Air. I'm not gonna take credit. I can't take credit for that, but actually worked out pretty well for me because I bought the Air and it happened to be a really nice machine, so I was pretty happy about that. I was one of those MacBook Pro buyers before the Air came out. This was the first MacBook Air I bought, so I'm glad I did. And historically, the MacBook Air line has been pretty much a consumer-based product and has been underpowered in the past. Apple hasn't even updated it in a long time until the M1. They simply targeted a different audience than the M1 version ended up targeting. Now, as a side note, because I think that Apple messed up, and to our advantage with the MacBook Air, I don't think that the next iteration of the MacBook Air is going to spill all of the latest Apple Silicon goodness onto us for free. So in my opinion, the next MacBook Air will have Apple really reining in some of that power and give us a MacBook Air device that we've been more used to in the past. A less powerful device, while saving more power for the MacBook Pros. Now, if that's the case, then when Apple does release the next line of MacBook Airs, and if they don't turn out to be as revolutionary as the M1 series were, let's call it M2, okay? I'm not saying that there's gonna be an M2, but let's just call it that, okay? Next one, M2. Then I think there'll be a rush to buy up the remaining MacBook Air M1s. Now let's get something out of the way. Is the MacBook Air M1 the most powerful MacBook? Of course not. It also has some pretty hard limits on it, like, the obvious stuff. 2 Thunderbolt connections, no HDMI, supports only 1 external monitor instead of many like the MacBook Pros do. It only goes up to 16 gigabytes of RAM max, By the way, no reason to get the 8, go for the 16. I explain why in my other videos. And it has 8 CPU and 8 GPU cores. So if you're doing machine learning, might not be enough GPU cores, like for example, the new Mac Studios are going up to 64 GPU cores. However, if you're doing machine learning, you're probably going to actually use a Windows machine or a Linux machine with a dedicated discrete graphics card, like an RTX 3090, for example. But also, since I'm talking about the Mac Studio, if we compare some of the results that I've had of the tests that I ran on the Mac Studio with 64 gigs of RAM and 48 core GPU and 20 core CPU, well, the amount of money that I spent on that Mac Studio does not give me 2 times or 2.5 times the value of the MacBook Air. In other words, the numbers are there, the specs are there, but I'm not getting huge benefits from it. And the MacBook Air M1 with 16 gigs of RAM was only, I believe, $1,200 as opposed to $4,000 for the M1 Ultra Mac Studio, and that's not even a laptop. The only time when it did actually make a big difference is Xcode projects, purely Xcode projects. That's when we saw really huge improvements in build speeds. You can check out my Xcode video on the details on that. But cross-platform JavaScript builds, the MacBook Air actually did as well as the M1 Pro chip, exactly the same when I built the large NativeScript plugins repo. When it comes to Android builds, the MacBook Air actually did slightly better than the M1 Pro in my tests. And with the web app speeds, the MacBook Air did a little bit better than the M1 Pro in certain cases. Speedometer did better, but with Jetstream, it didn't do as well, but very close results. And of course, when it comes to comparing it to the MacBook Pro, an Intel Core i9 MacBook Pro that I've been testing it against, and that's a $4,000 MacBook. The MacBook Air actually beats it in pretty much every single situation. And let's see, a concrete example I can give you is a C++ test that I ran here, where the MacBook Air ran an algorithm in 24 seconds compared to MacBook Pro Intel 43 seconds. Okay, I can link to that video down below. I just had a comment from Dennis Chioza. He is doing Java and Android development on a MacBook Air with 16 gigs of RAM, and he says it's more than enough, and he connected it to a Dell 32-inch 4K monitor, so he can confirm that the MacBook Air is a small little beast, ultra portable, powerful, and he sees no reason to buy the MacBook Pro at all. And you know what? I agree with him 100%. If I was just doing purely development work, and if I didn't have to make all these videos and, you know, the stuff that I do, I could probably get away with just using this little machine for a lot of my development work. So is the MacBook Air for everyone? Well, no, but most likely if you're in need of a very powerful machine, you're not looking at the MacBook Air anyway. But if the MacBook Air is on your radar, chances are you're in that range, price range for value, and within that range, the MacBook Air rules. So I've been getting a lot of questions from you folks, students, and people that are just getting started. Is the MacBook Air a good one, considering we have all these other options right now available to us? And yeah, it's still a very good deal and a very good option. Hopefully this video was helpful to you. I'd appreciate a thumbs up if you did like this video, and consider subscribing for more tests. I'll see you next time.